Bhakti, you spoke to Kaiser, na, just now?
I just spoke to him.
He's joining?
I think we are live now, so.
No, we are not. On YouTube, it's live, but we are still in practice session.
So it's working. I just got the notification right now.
Ananya, does Samir have Samir or Vishnu have access
Yeah.
to the
No, can you just share the links? No, they don't, but you can share the links with them now. Either YouTube or FB, if whichever they want, you can send it.
You were live, guys. You were live on YouTube. So it's working. I just got the notification right now.
Ananya, does
Yes.
No, the sound from YouTube.
The lag from YouTube. Chirantan, just mute your. Yeah, I think now it's okay.
And Chirantan, you can now start the session. It's only 3 minutes. Let people.
Yeah, we should start. So, actually, okay.
Yeah, start. I think let people start coming in here.
Hi, Kaiser.
Hello, Kaiser. You're on mute.
Hi, Dr. Dasgupta.
Hello.
So that's Kaiser. He's the president of the South Asia IB Schools Association. And that's Professor Dasgupta, that's Professor Preeta. They are the workshop leaders for today. And in fact, Dr. Dasgupta also is the director of the Center for Writing and Pedagogy. And
Great.
Nice to meet you, Kaiser.
Same here.
Hello.
Preeta and
Hi, nice to meet you.
Ananya.
Yes.
We're going live.
Yeah, please go live.
start the webinar.
Yeah. The recording will be there, right? It says this meeting is being recorded. Continue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute. Give me a minute.
All right, look at those numbers pouring in. We start in another 2 minutes.
Yeah. It's starting exactly at 3, is it?
Yes.
It will take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to settle down.
Yeah, we'll just, I guess, introduce each other and take care of those formalities.
Yeah.
So it seems we had quite a few registrations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slowly adding it.
To over 3 o'clock.
I think, yeah, something needs to be turned off.
Yeah, I said we can give maybe a couple of more minutes for students to join.
Yeah.
Start at maybe 3:03. I hope that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
Sure, there's plenty of time. Not an issue.
And perhaps if you wish, you can go a little beyond, like 5-10 minutes, just to cover up your time, right?
Folks are already raising their hand, Preeta.
So all
have raised their hand. 4.
Maybe participants can type their question in the chat box. We will not be able to take the hand raises.
Yeah, somebody is asking if you are allowed to unmute yourself. So we'd request you to just type it in the chat instead of.
Yeah.
Well, there is also an existential questions. Why are we here?
Why are we here?
I wish I had an appropriate answer to that. to make our lives a little bit meaningful, perhaps.
Audio is
We'll
very
try.
feeble.
We'll try. Can't promise.
Someone is saying audio is
Feeble.
feeble.
Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes.
I'll be doing most of the talking. Okay.
Yes.
So it may be.
Yes, so to all our attendees, actually this is a Zoom webinar format, so you won't be able to unmute yourself or switch on your camera. You will be able to ask any questions that you have in the Q&A box, and you can probably raise your hand, but I don't.
Hand raises we won't be able to
so
entertain.
with the numbers
Just
that
two
we are
questions in the.
I don't think we'll be able to allow you to speak, but please put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll take them during or after the session.
Somebody is asking what is today's topic. We'll get to all of that. In fact, Pritha, now might be a time to maybe share that link, or Vikram, one of you.
Yeah.
Just share the link with the reading where I had described what we are doing. It seems as though some students don't know.
Yeah, I'll just introduce that.
Put it in the chat box now, so the ones who are there can take a look at it. So, Vikram, are you doing it, or is Pritha doing it?
I don't have that link, so Vikram, it's better if you do it.
Yeah, I'll just do it.
Okay, so participants who are coming in and are not, maybe have questions about what we are doing today, or maybe that is what that existential question was, what are we doing here today? If you share the link, which was shared with all participants who registered, you will find it will take you to a short reading. And today's presentation is actually, today's discussion is based on that reading. So if you take a look at it while we wait, you will get an idea as to what we are doing. And the rest I will, of course, explain as I start.
I think we'll start the session.
I think so, Vikram. I think we'll start the session.
People will continue to join. So a very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Vikram Patel. I'm part of the Office of Outreach at Kriya University. Kriya is liberal arts and sciences, one of the most progressive liberal arts and sciences universities of the country. We are based very close to Chennai in south of India. We are located in a place called Sri City. Kriya is a fully philanthropic university based on the model of collective philanthropy, backed by academicians, industry leaders, intellectuals from around the world. People like Dr. Raghuram Rajan, Anand Mahendra, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw from Biocon, and Anu Aga, and people like that. We have two programs, two schools. The School of Interwoven Arts and Sciences, which offers currently undergraduate programs in BA and BSc honors, where we offer liberal education. And we have the IFMR Graduate School of Business that offers MBA programs, which has been running for the past 20 years. Kriya has one of the most prolific set of faculty members, people again from some of the best universities teaching at Kriya. And we have a fully residential program, where we offer interdisciplinary courses. Kriya is also pioneering the concept of interwoven learning, which is beyond interdisciplinarity, wherein we truly, I think even before the NEP came in, we were talking about interweaving of the arts and the sciences, interweaving the Western and Eastern perspectives, interweaving industry into academia. And one of the things, how we do that is through many support centers that students have at Kriya. And one of the center is the Popular Center for Writing and Pedagogy, which is presenting this workshop today. And this is really a very momentous occasion for all of us, because we are partnering with one of the very renowned group of schools, and we are unveiling the first workshop. So I'd really like to invite Ms. Bhakti Shah. She's the director for the Office of Outreach to take this ahead.
Thank you, Vikram. I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. I won't take too much of your time, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we're doing this. And someone had a question about why we're here. Well, you're here because a workshop the workshop that's about to happen is going to shed a light on a very important skill that is unfortunately not really being honed much at the school level. And the partnership between the South Asia IB Schools Association and Kriya University aims to conduct many such workshops, which are going to focus on skill building, not just for students, but also for teachers, for counselors, for school leaders. The whole concept of this partnership is not just getting together and talking more about NEP and how we're going to get affected, but the fact is the focus of this partnership is action. We are going to implement a lot of interesting workshops for students and teachers and counselors. This is the first one. We are very proud of the Center for Writing and Pedagogy at Kriya University, and they have been doing some path-breaking work in this area. And we are very pleased that this cohort that is here, all of you, are probably one of the first ones to really benefit, in such a large scale manner from the expertise of Professor Das Gupta, Professor Preeta, and many other faculty members. So without any further ado, I just quickly want to invite Kaiser. Kaiser Dupaishi, he is the president of the South Asia IB Schools Association. He has truly galvanized the space with the SAIBSA, through the various professional development and upskilling opportunities in the last decade that SAIBSA has been spearheading. So Kaiser, over to you, and then we can kick off the session.
Good afternoon, students. I believe there are over 1,000 of you over here, and 500 in this, I can see over here in this model, and the rest, I believe, are onto live Facebook and YouTube.
YouTube, yes.
So students, particularly the IB students, this is amongst this pandemic has caused us to think and rethink in manners in which we can do a lot more upskilling with the students. And this has come out of our discussions with all the principals of the IB schools. And it gives us it's really an honor and a pleasure to have this kind of webinar series developed. And we thought that it would be nice to do it this time because grade 11 is on its way to preparing for extended essay, and also grade 9 we brought in also because it's like a precursor to academic writing, English literature, etc. Those areas which definitely require skill building. And so while we talk in terms of research skills and how to write, and normally what we have in most of our IB schools around this time, I like to tell the Kriya University professors and people, is the extended essay orientation going on. Extended essay is a research paper. Children are planning their internal assessments in different subject areas, which are also research components. So we normally begin with unpacking the extended essay criteria, telling them about academic honesty, telling them about skill building. So this is one of those items which we felt that it could be added on at this point of time. And it's really a pleasure to have Kriya University take up the cudgels on our behalf, which is a liberal arts college. And I believe it's one of the finest universities we have in the private sector, and very promising, and has professors of renowned eminence, if I may say so. So you are going to gain a lot of skills through this insights, perspectives in this series which you're going to have. We plan to have a series happening over time. So perhaps it's this academic writing, then we might crunch into one particular area in the academic writing and expand on that. Perhaps it could be just about source analysis, just the aspect of how do you evaluate sources before you actually go about writing on something. It could be in terms of academic honesty and the way to weave and how to go about taking this piece forward. So it would be a series on this and on any other topic which you would feel like wanting. I would request Vikram to just write down on the chat our email ID, which is contact@saibsa.net. If Vikram could just type that in there in the chat, so that the students who are here could pick that up and suggest to us. And when you're suggesting to you, these will go to your heads of school, as well as your coordinators, your DP coordinators, your MYP coordinators, etc. And therefore, your voice too will be heard as to what you would like to do. So so this is not something like an add-on. We felt that it is something which we do, which will be very directly beneficial to what you're exactly doing in the IB-DP program at the moment. Further, I think there's a lot which we can gain from the university, because it's a liberal arts and science university, and that's what the IB is actually framed as, because you kind of don't just do sciences, you individuals in societies. It's a package in itself. So I think it's wonderful that the philosophical underpinnings between Kriya and IB schools so well gel together. So we felt that this would be the university we should start this initiative with. So I hope you have a great time, and please give your feedback. And there is our email ID. Some people feel like wanting to write in and tell us, or tell me, and through me tell your heads of schools and your coordinators. We'd only be delighted, right? So welcome to this this platform of collaboration and cooperation, this open source method. Okay.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya Dasgupta, for taking this on, and Dr. Preeta and Bhakti and Vikram for being the back-end support to this movement.
Our pleasure. And I think
thank you so
what
much.
I'm going to do is log off this session, because we can have more kids then log in, and actually, we're taking their place. So I'm actually going to do that. But have a great session. I'm going to watch it on YouTube.
Thank you so much, Bhakti, and thank you, Kaiser, for those words. And I must at this point say that we have students joining us from over 150 schools, from 5 countries, almost 60 cities from across. So really a very warm welcome. And now I'm not going to take too much time. I will introduce Dr. Ananya Dasgupta and Professor Preeta. And we are really happy to bring Dr. Dasgupta, because her calendar is busier than the calendar of the President of the US. So we managed to get her time. And to formally introduce Dr. Dasgupta, she's the director for the Center for Writing and Pedagogy, CWP, that we call it. She's also an associate professor of literature at Kriya University. Ananya has a PhD in early modern English literature from Rutgers University. As a graduate student, she trained in writing pedagogy at the Rutgers writing program. During her stint as an early modernist teaching Renaissance literature, she noticed the disconnect in the writing abilities of college students versus the expectation of the college curriculum. To help bridge the gap, she started offering critical writing sessions to students on an informal basis. Soon this took up shape of official courses, with Dasgupta designing the curriculum and pedagogy and hiring and training teachers. Determined to make the teaching of writing matter in the Indian higher education curriculum, she set up the renowned Center for Writing and Writing Studies at the Opajindal Global University in 2018. Apart from teaching undergraduate and postgraduate students, she also works with faculty in social sciences and humanities to help them incorporate strategies for writing pedagogy in their classrooms teaching. She participated in the EU-funded Project Equal and produced many other things. A critical writing course module for all universities partnered under the project. The module is now available as an open access course on the SWAYAM platform. She won a grant to collaborate with the Thompson Writing Program at the Duke University and continues the collaboration to develop research for teaching writing. Publications include articles on 17th century English literature and pedagogy. She's recently published a book, Magical Epistemologies, Forms of Knowledge in Early Modern English Drama. She has co-edited This Unsettled Place, a critical anthology of American poetry and short stories, and has published a book of poems, Between Short Places. She's currently working on several collaborative projects in writing pedagogy. Her fiction, poetry, and photo art have appeared online and in magazines and anthologies. I will let Professor Dasgupta also give a brief introduction about the CWP. So today's workshop for all of you is titled, What Do We Communicate in Academic Writing and How? So in the next 2-hour session that we are all here, we will take a close look at the purpose of academic writing as a type that allows researchers to produce and communicate new knowledge. And we will also pay attention to different registers of language that the communication of knowledge calls for, and think about what it takes to make such prose enjoyable to read and write. I hope all of you have actually gone through the short essay that we circulated, which is The Butterflies That Hear with Their Wings by Ed Yong. So Professor Ananya, on to you.
Thank you so much, Vikram. Thank you so much, Kaiser. Bhakti, I know, has logged off. Thank you to Bhakti as well. So lots of introductions have happened. Now, quickly, I'll say that I head the Center for Writing and Pedagogy, as Vikram said, and what I do there is try to figure what makes reading and writing fun to do. And reading and writing in the context of schoolwork, college work, papers that we need to do, right? So typically we say, oh, maybe writing a short story is fun or reading a poem is fun, but who likes to read textbooks, right? Who likes to do homework, right? So I look into that and see whether that can be fun or not. And I must admit, I typically only work with college students and university faculty and all of that. And occasionally I work with class 11 and 12 students. But this range of students from class 9 to class 12, this is my first time doing this for so many of you together online. And I plan to have a lot of fun doing that. So the Center for Writing Pedagogy is really trying to figure out how to make reading and writing valuable, reading and writing fun, right? To introduce Preetha. Preetha is going to help me out today. She'll keep a handle on the chat box and she'll ask me questions on your behalf. Many of you had questions about whether or not your audio video is going to be turned on. It won't. Since the numbers are so high, we are not going to be able to take hand raises, but if you ask questions in the chat box, Preetha will keep a tab on it and ask me whenever it's appropriate to do so. So who's Preetha? Preetha works as a faculty member at the Center for Writing and Pedagogy. And just like me, she's also training to make reading and writing, really figure out how reading and writing works. At one level, it seems really obvious, but what we do today maybe will show us that paying attention to the obvious is all we need to do, and maybe we don't do that, right? So we won't waste too much time now. We will get directly into the presentation. You have been given a link to a short essay. Some of you have asked why it's been given. You will see why it's been given. If you have read it, fine. If you haven't, just open it on your laptops, keep it ready, and I will be referring to that essay as I conduct this workshop. So can we just start, Vikram? I think I'm most comfortable doing that.
Please go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And since, I mean, usually we start workshops by introducing ourselves, but then we also wait to hear from all our participants, but that's not going to be possible. So I'm going to start directly with the presentation, and you may have seen the poster for it, which gives you the title of this presentation as well. So the title of this presentation is What Do We Communicate in Academic Writing and How? And I'm going to break it up. Turns out all of you are, several of you are writing something called the extended essay. Kaiser talked about the importance of the research as the extended essay and the research that you need to do in that. So this is aimed at that, but also people who are not necessarily writing a research essay right now, I'm hoping will get a little something out of this presentation / workshop today. So when I say workshop, what do I mean? you will be expected to do a little bit of writing. And when we come to those parts, I will ask you to respond to certain questions, and you can type it in the chat box. And once again, Preetha will read them out to me. So what are we doing? So several of you wanted to know what it is that we are doing today. It's this. Today, we are going to talk about the purpose of academic writing. Right? And I'm going to give you the answer right away. And by the end of the presentation, you can tell me whether you agree or not, whether I managed to convince you or not of the answer that I'm giving. So I'm going to say that the purpose of academic writing is to make new knowledge and to tell people that there is new knowledge. Right? So I'm saying the purpose of academic writing is to make new knowledge. But then some of you might ask me, but then what is academic writing, and how can writing make new knowledge? Don't we have to do research for that? So if some of you are thinking about that, I am going to take that question up.
Ananya, sorry to interrupt you. Some of the students are saying that the voice is not loud enough. So
are you able to hear me clearly enough, Preetha?
I am able to, yeah.
So it's possible that some students can't hear me clearly, but that may have to do with some audio issues on their end. I'm speaking as loudly as I can, and there is no interruption here.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to, so let's start with the first point, right? So the point is that, okay, so what is academic writing? How do you make new knowledge? How do you communicate all that? But it seems to me that even before we come to those big questions, there is one basic question. And all of you, I know there are exams going to start and you're at home studying. So my question is, what is the point of all this studying that you're all doing in school? And then you go to college and you do more studying. What is the point? Why do we even bother to do this, right? In fact, when you are studying, what are you studying? It turns out schools, whether IB schools or any other schools, have textbooks. So my basic question right now for all of you is, why do we have textbooks, right? What is the point of textbooks? When we are reading and studying from textbooks, what is it that we are expected to do? So let's begin with that question. And on the box on the right side, you will see that I have a couple of questions. And here is where you can now immediately start doing some work. I will ask you these questions and you can start maybe responding. Give me an answer to that question, type it in the chat box and Preetha will read it out to me. I will type that answer here. So when you all study, right? When we study, whether I study in college or you study in school, and any subject, doesn't matter science or arts or poetry or literature, doesn't matter what. When we study, what do we do when we study? Can you type some answers in the chat box? What do we do when we study?
To get knowledge.
Get knowledge, all right. What else? But what do you do in order to get knowledge?
We read.
Read, excellent. What else do we do?
We understand the topic.
Understand, right? Very good. Comprehension. We have to understand what the topic is.
We analyze it and understand it.
So there is analysis. In order to understand, there is analysis. Very good. You all are very, very good at this. I can see already.
We concentrate.
Very good. And to do all of this, we need to focus, right?
Yeah.
So we need to focus for all of this. I'll put it here. We need to pay attention. I agree with you. What else?
We take notes.
We take notes. Excellent. We read, we take notes. Yes.
We
okay.
Practice.
Yeah, we practice. We are also practicing. We practice solving problems, for example. We practice writing answers. Right? Absolutely right. How about, okay, so then what are we reading when we are reading all of, what are we taking notes from? What are we trying to understand? So assumption is we all have our textbooks in school, right? So my question is, what do textbooks contain?
Information.
Information, fantastic. What else?
Knowledge again, of course.
They contain information, knowledge. Anything else?
Images.
They're very good. They do actually contain images. I agree with you. There may be
Yeah.
images, there may be graphs, right?
Yes.
There may be drawings. What else?
Flow charts.
There can be flow charts.
Basic idea about the subject.
Basic ideas, right? So there are chapters. You have chapters and chapters have ideas in them. Very good. Excellent. I like that.
Concepts, questions.
Ideas, concepts, questions. Wonderful, wonderful. How about this? Do all types of knowledge come from reading and writing? What do you think?
Could you repeat that, Ananya?
Do all types of knowledge? So you told me that textbooks contain knowledge and information. My question is, do all types of knowledge come from reading and writing? Is reading and writing the only way to get knowledge? Yes, Prika, you were saying something?
Comes from lived experience too.
Lived experience. Can you give an example of a kind of knowledge you may have which may not come from reading and writing?
Also from videos and other media.
Okay, so reading and writing, listening, it could be other media, lived experience, other media. How about, can you give me an example of a kind of knowledge that's not necessarily coming to you from reading and writing?
Internship, sports.
Sports, very good. How about other things? Sports, you have to be on the playground. Otherwise, you're not going to learn. Anything else?
Behavior.
Behavior, all right.
Feelings.
Social behavior. Someone said feelings. That's interesting. How about cooking? How about cooking or gardening?
Yeah. Someone said agriculture.
Huh?
Someone said agriculture. Nature.
Okay, agriculture, all right. Someone said agriculture. How about cooking or painting?
Dancing, music.
Right? These, so then there are all these other forms of knowledge as well, which may not necessarily come from reading and writing. So now my next question, is there reading and writing about all forms of knowledge? So take this list that you had in the previous question. Do all types of knowledge come from reading and writing? You said no. Some knowledge comes from lived experience. Some knowledge is practice, skill, or art. How about that? Is there reading and writing about all of that? For example, agriculture, you're right. You have to actually be on the ground and you have to put down seeds. You have to make sure that you look after the saplings. All of that has to happen. But is there work? Is there research in the field of agriculture? Do people study how plants grow or behave or how soils function?
Agricultural science.
Yes, turns out, yes. So I'll just put down yes. That even when it comes to dance or music or cooking, we write things down. We write down recipes, we write down theories, we document practice. Turns out even if our knowledge is a practice or a skill, something we do, there is a lot of reading and writing associated with that as well. Those of you who learn music, for example, I know you have a theory exam as well as a practice exam, right? My final question to you all today is this. For this section, why do we have homework and exams? Why do you think these school teachers give you so much homework? Is it because they want to bother you, or is there some other reason why we do homework?
Practice.
Practice. So what we have
Check
been taught
knowledge.
in class, what we have been taught in class, we need to figure out on our own, right? So we need to practice that on our own. So that's why we have homework. Why else do we have homework?
To test knowledge.
Right, to test knowledge, right? To test knowledge, and the knowledge you all told me is coming from the textbook. It's all there in the textbook, and we have to practice and see whether we can, we have understood that information, and then our knowledge about that is also tested, right?
Revise.
Anything else?
Revise.
To revise. How will we learn if we don't revise? And again, what are we revising? We're revising information that we're getting from text. So this list that is coming up right now is something that all of you already do in school, but we are going to pay attention to all of this and think about whether we can revisit what we do and see it in a different way by the time I end today's workshop. But the main point here also is that your point of reference is the textbook. There is no reading, writing, studying, revising, practicing, taking exams, none of that unless you work with your textbook. And today we don't have a textbook, but why is it that you have textbooks? We're going to think about why do they give you a textbook? And if they don't give you a textbook, they still give you a reading, right? So for today's workshop, I have not gone into any of your textbooks, but I've given you a text. Some of you asked in the chat box, why have you given us this essay to read? I have given you this essay to read for the same reason that your schools give you textbooks to read. Turns out when we want to study, when we want to do research, when we want to write, we can't just do it in a vacuum. We can't just sit in the middle of nowhere and say, okay, now I'm going to study. Even if I have to do research on nature, even if I have to go out and do field work, something has to be prepared in advance, which comes from written material. So today, and that's the same logic as to why you have textbook. And I'm hoping when you go back to your textbooks after the end of today, you will see something new in that. So today I'm going to use, in lieu of your textbook, a very short article in the Atlantic called The Butterflies That Hear With Their Wings. It's an essay by Ed Yong. And the question that I have asked us is, what is the purpose of academic writing? We are going to try and understand the purpose of academic writing by paying attention to this text. So you all already have that essay, that link was shared with you, but I'm going to also pick up examples from the essay in order to see whether the claims I'm making, that the point of academic writing is to make new knowledge and to communicate new knowledge. Really, that's all that academic writing mainly is trying to do. And we'll see whether what I'm saying I can bear out with an example or not, right? So let's, for example, as I said, I will be taking examples from the essay itself. So what I have done is from the middle of the essay, I've picked up this one quotation. Preetha, may I request you to read the quotation in the green box, and the quotation is from Yong's article in the Atlantic. It's somewhere in the middle. Can you read it out, Preetha, for me?
Sure, sure. This is a new means of hearing that had never been described before, says Fernando Montealegre Z of the University of Lincoln. I remember that during my entomology training back in the 90s, we were told that Saturine butterflies could be identified by the swollen vein. We didn't know why this vein was swollen, and I would have loved to have heard an explanation.
Okay, thank you, Preetha. Yeah, thank you, Preetha. So this is a quote that I have taken from the essay that I gave you for a reading. So what can we, so my question is, what can we learn about learning? So when we are studying, what exactly are we doing? When we say we are writing an essay, we are doing research, what exactly are we doing, whether we are in school or college or it's a professor here, right? So what I did was I clicked on the link to Fernando Montealegre Z. Turns out he's a professor at the University of Lincoln, which Ed Yong also tells us. And I wanted to know, he says, I remember that during my entomology training back in the 90s, I was like, well, what was he doing in the 90s? And if you look at and I just went online and I found his website, turns out in the 90s, he was in college, right? He was a BSc honors student. He was studying science. And in that study, something happened, right? So in the middle of the essay, there is this person called Professor Fernando Montenegro Z, who talks about something. He's referring to, and I've not told you what it is. If you've read the essay, you know, but if you haven't, I will tell you in a minute. He says, this is a new means of hearing that had never been described before. So he is now a professor at the University of Lincoln, and he runs a bioacoustics and sensory biology lab. He's a professor, and he says, you know, I've never heard of this before. This is a very, very new thing. Because when I was a student in the 90s, we were told that butterflies, some kind of butterflies could have been identified by a swollen vein, but we didn't know why this vein was swollen. Nobody told us that. And we didn't have this explanation that we have now. So I've started you off in the middle. I've not started with the beginning of the essay, but right here in the middle, what is this person saying? This person is saying that he has come across some new knowledge. And this new knowledge was missing when he was a student, right? When he was a student in his undergraduate, or when you are, as you are students in your reading your school textbooks, there may be information there, there may be observation there that you are not given an explanation for, right? Because nobody yet knows, right? So what do we find? Right away in the middle of the essay, we are finding that there's a professor who is saying that the point of academic work is to find new knowledge, and he's come across some new knowledge which wasn't there before. So what can we learn about learning from Professor Montalegre, right? We can see that the point of studying this essay or any of your textbook or anything that you ever study is going to be to find new knowledge. And the new knowledge can be in the form of a new explanation. It could be a new question. It could be a new way to look at things. But the point is that there has to be some new knowledge that we are waiting to uncover, right? What does that mean? Then that there is old knowledge as well, right? Old knowledge, for example, as you have in your textbooks in school or college, there might be observations and there might not be explanation for it. Or there might be some explanation that later on some new research is going to change, right? Again, when we are studying, what are we doing? We are recognizing gaps in existing knowledge. And what we are learning is that unanswered questions. So basically saying that, you know, when we studied this butterfly in college, the Saturnine butterfly, we knew there was a swollen vein, but we didn't know what that swollen vein was. So there was an unanswered question. What does the swollen vein mean? And nobody at that point in 1997, when he was a student in college, nobody knew the answer, right? So what am I saying? So what I'm saying that when we are studying, whether we are studying textbooks in class 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, or we are studying textbooks in college, one of the things that we want to hold on to is the point that not all questions are answered. So if you're asking me, what are we doing when we're doing research? We're also trying to keep a tab on questions that are not answered, because unanswered questions are actually as important as answers that we think are correct at a given point. Now, you may find that in school, typically it's like there's an exam, you're given a question and you're expected to give a right answer. And you know, there is a right answer for the context that you're working in, but the larger idea is for us to remember that answers are actually provisional. Answers, we must remember, no matter how scientifically proven they are at any given point, answers can always be changed and answers can sometimes be completely reversed. So unanswered questions are very, very important. So when we are studying, what are we doing? We are looking out for unanswered questions as much as we are looking at answers, but reminding ourselves that they are possibly provisional answers. So now we can go back to the question that I asked earlier, what is the purpose of academic writing? And I said to make new knowledge and tell people what new knowledge there is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the very first few sentences that this article begins with. So the article by Ed Yong begins with these first few sentences. I'm going to read it out aloud. Please read along with me. And this is how the article begins. So our purpose right now is to think about how academic writing makes new knowledge, and how that knowledge is transmitted, right? So now I'm going to break that up into two smaller questions, and I will do that. I'll come back to that after I've finished reading this passage with you all. When Jane Yak speaks, she knows that her butterflies can hear her. They are listening with their wings. Yak, a professor at Carleton University, studies a group of butterflies called nymphalids, which include well-known species like monarchs, morphos, emperors, and admirals. Many members of this group have ears at the base of their wings. If one lifted its top pair of wings in the air, the ear would be in what you would think of as the armpit, Yak says. So this is how the essay begins. We know that the author of this essay is Ed Yong. Now here's my question, and you can type your answer in the chat box and Pritha will read it out to me. So there are two people here. There's Ed Yong and there is Jane Yak. Who is producing the new knowledge? So you would agree that there is new knowledge. It's been told to us right away in the title, and of course from Montealegre also we know that the idea that butterflies hear with their wings is a new piece of information that science has come up with. So question, who is producing the new knowledge and who is communicating it? So type your answer in the chat box as Pritha reads it out to me.
Yak is producing.
Yeah, Pritha, can you speak up, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is one question also here, which I will come to later. Yeah. But here it is being said that Jane Yak is the one producing new knowledge.
Yes.
And then who is communicating it is Yong.
Yong, very good. And what's your question?
The question here says, what does it mean when we say new knowledge?
Very good, very good. Excellent question. And so it's very obvious, the answer seems very obvious, that Ed Yong is communicating the new knowledge that Jane Yak has produced, right? So someone asked, well, what do you mean by new knowledge? Literally, it means knowledge that we did not have before. So my question to you is, before you read this article or before you came to this workshop, did you know that butterflies could hear with their wings? I didn't know it. Before I read Ed Yong's article in The Atlantic, I didn't know that butterflies could hear with their wings. And this is, and remember even Professor Montealegre, who went to college in 1990, says, you know, we never knew that this was possible. And it's only with Jane Yak's new research that this knowledge has been produced, right? Now, you all said that, and it seems obvious, Ed Yong is the science reporter. He's communicating the knowledge that Jane Yak has produced, right? So that seems like a simple enough answer, except how is Jane Yak communicating that knowledge to either Ed Yong or to anybody else, to the scientific community? So she would have also actually had to write down what she's working on. So at some point, and not just in terms of finishing the research, while doing the research, she would have had to do all the things you said you do while studying. She would have had to take notes. She would have had to read textbooks on butterflies that are already there. She would have had to read up what research was there. She would have had to comprehend and analyze all of that, just like you all do when you study. And when she and we look at that part as to how she came to think that maybe there is some research possible into the ears of butterflies. At some point when she got her data together and she realized she had a discovery, she would have had to write that paper and publish it somewhere, right? And it's only then that a science reporter would have heard of the work and known to communicate it. So while it is true that in this scenario, Ed Yong is communicating knowledge produced by other scientists, scientists have to also write down and communicate that knowledge themselves, right? So if that is the case, now let's think about this. What is the difference between Ed Yong's and Jane Yak's work, right? So again, our goal right now is to think about what is the purpose of academic writing and what is academic writing. So what is the difference? Now, if you want to know who's producing the knowledge and who's communicating it, we also need to know what the difference of the work is. What kind of work did Ed Yong do to write the article? And what kind of work did Jane Yak have to do? Can you write a few sentences to respond to that question? What is the difference between Ed Yong's work and Jane Yak's work?
Somebody says, sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Someone says that Yak's work was targeted at the scientific community.
Yak's work is targeted at the scientific community, but what kind of work is Yak doing?
Yeah, Yak is an empirical research. Young is secondary research plus writing.
Very good, excellent answer. Jane Yak actually has to go to the lab, has to cut open wings, probably look at it under the microscope, figure out how to study this physical feature at the bottom of the wing. She has to do a lot of that in addition to all the reading and writing that she's also doing, right? But Ed Yong did not have to do all of that. Ed Yong needed to read up, needed to read all the research that there is, that Jane Yak has done, but also other people who have done, and had to put all of that together in an article. So those of you writing a research article right now, a research essay right now, and are not writing it on the basis of primary research, are reading up and putting all the sources together in the same way that Ed Yong does. But Yak's work also requires some kind of work in the lab and some instruments in order to do the work that she can write about. So it turns out that academic work to produce and communicate new knowledge is spread out among a few different people. So in order to ask the question or answer the question, what is academic writing? Then we need to really answer the question, what is academic work? And we've been sort of inching our way towards that, but now we are going to focus a little bit on Yak's work. And some of you have already given me some answers, but let's look at the essay itself and look at what the essay tells us about Yak's work. So I'm going to read from the green box, which is example 1. And this is a quote that I'm getting from Yong's essay from the beginning of the essay. I read you the first few sentences. This is after that. Over the years, Yak noticed that one group of nymphalids, the saturnines or browns, has weird veins on the top pair of wings. Veins are common to all butterfly wings. They are air-filled tubes that don't carry blood, but instead provide structural support. They're usually very thin, but the saturnines have one on each wing that's bizarrely bloated, like a single piece of penne pasta on a plate of spaghetti. Scientists have described these inflated veins before, but Yak noted that they lie very close to the saturnines' ears. Maybe, she suspected, they help the insects hear. So what is the work of an academic? And we know from the Montalegre quote that in 1997, when he's in college, they're already talking about one weird structure at the end of the vein, right? So Yak is not new to that at all. So somebody asked, what is new knowledge? To start, I mean, we never start with new knowledge. We start with commonplace knowledge. We start with things that we already know. So why do you have your school textbooks? Because we have to familiarize ourselves with what knowledge is already there before we can contribute any new knowledge. So new knowledge, we can't begin with new knowledge. So what we notice here is Yak's process. So Yak noticed something, and what she noticed, she describes as weird, right? She says that, you've all looked at butterflies, I'm sure, that there are these very, very thin kind of structures on its wings, and she's describing those. And in particular species, she finds that there's a bizarre, so it's a weirdness. There's something bizarre, something out of ordinary in what is usually commonplace, right? So the beginning of new knowledge, beginning of research is quite often in noticing something unusual in what is otherwise taken to be usual, right? So remember, Montalegre says that, you know, when I was in college, yeah, we did read about this, and yeah, we were told that there's a weird pump, but, you know, nobody explained what that was. We didn't know until now. And most people didn't worry about it. They said, yeah, okay, it's like that. But she stopped and she said, what is this bizarre thing? And I love her description. She says it was like a piece of a penne pasta on a plate of spaghetti. And you know, spaghettis are like long noodly pastas and pennes are like little cylinders. So she's like, yeah, it reminds me of that. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. And in that commonplace information, and we have also looked at butterflies. In fact, we may have looked at some of these butterflies that they're describing, but most of us never pause to worry about whether there is a little weird structure at the end of their wings, right? But Yak, once her attention is caught by something that she's calling weird and bizarre, she started paying attention to it. And as she paid attention, she noticed that this weird bump at the end of the wing actually lies very close to the ears of the saturnine. And the saturnine is a kind of a species of butterfly that she's looking at. And look at her language now. She says, maybe she suspected they help the insects here. So she makes a wild guess. So she uses the language of, I suspect, it might be, maybe, I am not sure. I have a feeling if it is so close to the ear, it might help the butterfly here, but I'm not sure, right? So before she can get to sure knowledge, what do we see? We see a scientist who stops on something that doesn't make sense. And that doesn't make sense, she actually uses the language of weird and bizarre and out of commonplace. And then she says, she makes a wild guess. It's a suspicion. It's a hypothesis. She says, could it be that this helps the butterfly here, right? So then this is how a scientist's mind works, and you have to work with existing knowledge. In fact, notice in the middle of it, when she's describing the weird veins on top of the pair of veins, she actually also, you have to know what the veins are, right? So the common knowledge is veins are common to all butterfly wings. They are air-filled tubes. They don't carry blood. And to me, actually, that was new knowledge also. I thought veins always carry blood. But here we are getting some new information that butterflies' wings have veins, but they don't carry blood. Not only do they not carry blood, some of them actually serve as, some veins will serve as a hearing device in a creature. Not what we thought veins do, right? So commonplace knowledge, usual knowledge, and studying and paying attention to what doesn't sit right in it is usually from where one starts if one has to produce new knowledge. So where does research start? Actually, research starts like this. Now I'm going to give you example 2. Example 2 is a little bit from the middle of the essay after Yak has noticed all of this and she has this hypothesis. She says, to test that idea, and of course, Ed Yong is reporting this to us. This is not in her voice. Whenever she says something in her voice, like she says, for example, you know, like the penne pasta, you know, all of that, we are told that it's Yak who noticed that or said that. But this is in Ed Yong's voice now. To test that idea, she sent specimens of the common wood nymph to Natasha Matre at the University of Toronto, who studies acoustic communications in insects. So turns out Yak has a hypothesis, but she's unable to do all of the work that she needs to do in her lab with her expertise. She sends it to somebody else who works on something that she doesn't. And that scientist is Natasha Matre. And so there's an idea. The idea is, the concept is that, oh, maybe it's a hearing device and it's at the level of the idea itself, but you have to test that idea. To test that idea, what does Natasha Matre do? She does some physical things. She plays noises at the butterfly's ears while shining. These are physical actions, playing noise, shining lasers, and then analyzing the data about reflected laser light, and she could analyze whether the ears are responding to different sounds or not, and look at the conclusion there, and that's in quotation marks. And Yak says this. What does Yak says? We can get a pretty good appreciation of what the butterfly is hearing. Right? So that's interesting. We can get a pretty good appreciation of what the butterfly is hearing. How can we do that? By the things that Natasha Matre does, playing noises, shining lasers, and then analyzing that data. So my question is this, so what are we trying to do? What is academic work? What is academic writing? And to answer that question, we said we have to figure out what work academics do. And if we figure that out, maybe we can get a sense for what that writing is. So here are some questions. I will need you to answer them. So think about this. How many people have we met so far? So question number one. How many people have we met so far in the slides, in the quotations that I put in the slides? What are the different types of work we have met so far? What are the different kinds of work that Matre and Yak and everybody else is doing, right? And please, let's not forget Montalegre Z either, right? So how many people have we met? What are the different types of work they are doing? Just think about it a minute. Take a minute, think about this. I'd like a response to that as soon as you are ready to give it to me in the chat box.
Yeah, most people are saying 3 people.
Can you speak up, Pritha?
Most people are saying 3 people.
Okay. Have we met 3 people? Okay. What
Some
else?
are saying 4.
Some are saying 4. Very good.
Yes.
What are the different types of work?
Someone is saying we have met researchers and professors.
Researchers, professors, what do they do? What is the kind of work? Like I said, when you study, what do you do? What are these people doing?
They're analyzing, they're conducting.
They're conducting experiments, they're analyzing the data from the experiment. So those are like physical things to do. Anything else?
Yeah. Investigating.
They are investigating, they're asking questions, they are making hypotheses. Anything else?
Reading and writing.
They're reading and writing. Excellent. Absolutely. They're reading and writing. Now with that, what I'm going to do, it's been an hour. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. It's 4 o'clock, almost 4 o'clock right now. Let's come back here by 4:05, right? Or maybe 4:07. I'd like you all to get a drink of water, get up, stretch your limbs a bit. Don't go away from the meeting, but take a short break, come back in 5 minutes, and we will resume from there. We will do part 2 of our workshop from there. So go ahead, take a break. I will start talking around 4:05, 4:07 again. Pritha?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. So let's just take a 5-minute break and we'll come back.
Sure.
Yeah, 5 to 7 minute break. Yeah.
Sure.
Preetha, you're back?
Yes, Anna, here.
Okay, we'll just give another minute and we'll
Sure.
start again. I was glad to have the break. I quickly ate a little something. Vikram had given me a muffin before we started, so I ate that now.
Good, good.
Okay.
Did you get a chance to have lunch since you left right after?
Yeah, it just got a little hairy, but yeah, I did eat something quickly before I left. All right, so it's almost time, no? To start. Is my screen still visible, Preetha?
1 second. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Although if you make it full screen, it will be good.
Perfect. Well, I could. Let's just see here. Some slides are to type something. I'll go off full screen when I do that. What kind of questions are you getting?
Quite a lot of questions. Somebody asked, is it essential to use compound sentences in academic writing?
We haven't even come there.
Yeah. Someone said, this is a very interesting question. Why is Ed Young's knowledge not new? Does it mean secondary research is not valid?
Good question. Yeah, very good question. Remind me to come back to that, because that was my question actually when I asked that obvious one. The hidden answer was actually this question. But yeah, we'll come back to that. Remind me. So it's time. Okay, welcome back everyone from your break. Let me remind you that if you're going to raise your hand, we are not going to be able to give you attention. But if you type your comments in the chat box, Preetha will keep a tab on it. Okay, so don't raise your hands. It's not going to work. All right, so the last slide had 2 large quotations and a bunch of different questions. And in the next hour, we are going to do more work with this. So if it seems like there was a lot here, don't worry, we are going to come back to it. So I had asked you several questions. How many people have we met so far? And what are the different types of work we have met so far? And I had reminded everyone, let's not forget Professor Montalegre, Z, right? So let's see, some of you gave me some answers. Let's focus in, hone in on that a little bit right now. So some people said 3, some people said 4. And I will agree with the people who said 4. So there's Ed Young, who is clearly a science reporter and who's put this article together for us. So if we are not reading articles in entomology and on butterfly research, and I don't because I don't have the time for that, but I do read The Atlantic, I do read other popular publications, and had Ed Young not written this article, I would have never learned about Jane Yak. So somebody in the chat box asked a very interesting question. Somebody said, well, how come we are saying that Jane Yak is doing primary research and is producing new knowledge? Is Ed Young not producing new knowledge? Now, that's a very, very good question that I will pose back to you, because it turns out that this new knowledge put together as new knowledge is actually Ed Young's work. And had I not read Ed Young, I would not have known anything about all of this either. So that's a very good question. Please hold on to that. We'll come back to that again. So there's Ed Young, who's doing the secondary research, who's doing the interview, who's writing the article that makes this knowledge communicable to people who are not scientists. So that's Ed Young. Jane Yak, right, whose work Young is reporting, has an idea and a hypothesis. So what's the kind? Now, of course, we know she's a scientist doing all kinds of different work, but in just the quote that we have, we know that she has an idea, right? She's wondering whether it is possible that this little bump at the end of one of the veins might be a hearing aid, right? So it's a hypothesis, it's an idea, and she can't test it out herself. So she sends it to another collaborator, somebody who specializes in studying something like that in her lab. Her name is Natasha Matre. And what does she do? She tests Yak's hypothesis. She puts out data, and that data is analyzed. These are also different actions, right? So these are the different types of work that these people are doing. And finally, in these excerpts, there are other people in the article, but in these quotations, we've met Professor Ferdinand Montealegre Z, who is an independent scientist who doesn't work with either Jane Yak or Natasha Matre, but Ed Yong has gone to Professor Montealegre Z because he's another scientist and has nothing to do with this work, but he confirms that yes, this is new knowledge and that this is valuable knowledge. So what have we done? We have met 3 people who work in universities, are doing research. One of them not even connected directly to that research, because that person is going to confirm the value and the newness of this work that other people who are collaborators are doing. Now, if Jane Yak and Natasha Matre are working together and you go to Matre and say, so do you like Jane Yak's work? Chances are Natasha Matre is going to say yes, right? But you go to someone completely different, like a peer in a different university, but also a scientist, keeps up with all the research. When that person reads this research and says, yes, this is new, this is valuable, it was not there when I was a college student and I would have loved to have this explanation then. Turns out this is actually a full process in academic scientific work. Right? So you have an idea, you have to do the work to test it out. And once you've done that work, you must have people who are not connected to the work, but are but know that type of work well to evaluate whether that work is actually new and valuable in the way that the scientists who are doing that are claiming that, right? So we get all of these different kinds of work. So then what do these examples tell us? You already gave me some answers. I'm going to put it all together in the green box here. So what do we learn about academic work? We learn that academic work cannot happen alone. Neither at the university nor at schools. It can't happen alone. We always need help. We always need to reach out to other people with different types of expertise. Sometimes we reach out to scholars in flesh and blood. Okay, call up someone, say, okay, your lab does this, or you have expertise in this area of knowledge. Can you help me? Can you collaborate with me? Sometimes that is not the case. Sometimes we will refer to the work that they have already done and published, right? So the reading and writing, textbooks, articles, books, chapters, all of that is also a way to work with other people. So the fundamental idea about academic work and academic research is the following. That academic work, whether it is researchers in colleges, universities, labs, or it is students, work doesn't happen alone. So whether you're working with your peers or you're reading your textbook, coming back to the idea of the textbook that I started with, why is it that you read textbook? Why is it that your school is giving you a textbook to read that you have to study and take an exam on? Is because those textbooks contain the knowledge and the information which ensures that you're not working alone, right? So ideas are always in relation to other ideas. You never have academic work that is isolated. This is a very, very important point to remember. Academic work, turns out, needs ideas and it needs practice. So ideas are thoughts, they are abstract, but thoughts that are abstract also need to be given material form. Sometimes they are given material form as the idea itself. For example, when Jane Yak is going to say maybe that she suspects that perhaps it's possible that it's so close to the ears, could it be a hearing aid? So it's at the level of idea, it's at the level of a concept or a hypothesis. It's not been tested out, but that's also been written down, right? So ideas have to be given material form as an idea, or sometimes ideas also have to be put into practice. So for example, with you have theory and you have practicals. What is the relationship between the two, right? We see that with Jane Yak's, we saw that with the Jane Yak quote, right? What does this tell us? It tells us that in academic work, thinking and doing go together. Remember that question I had asked you earlier? Does all knowledge come from reading and writing? And some of you had said no. Knowledge can come from lived experience, knowledge can come from practice, knowledge, some forms of knowledge we actually learn from practice. So a craft or something like a cooking or a dancing or a music we may learn in practice. But then we said, okay, there are theoretical or conceptual components there as well, right? So here are the main three things I want you to hold on to about the studying that you're doing right now. That we need those books and articles, without that we can't work. That ideas may be put down as ideas, and until they are given material form, we don't know what they are. Ideas are sometimes translated into practice, and that practice, so that the idea and the practice, the thinking and the doing actually have to go together. It's very hard to separate them and do them in exclusion to each other, right? And we will spend a little bit more time on that. And what do I mean by that, right? So here's a thing that I'd like you all to do, but before you do that, writing, and this is what today's, the payoff of today's workshop is, writing is both thinking and doing. This is the thing that I hope you will hold on to and work with and take with you today, right? And I will explain that more. So we said that the world of scholarship, the world of studying may have ideas that are coming from doing or reading and writing, thinking and doing. We saw the separation, but writing as an activity, writing as an act, actually allows us to do both together. Writing is both thinking and doing. So that blue box question that keeps coming up in every other slide, what is the purpose of academic writing? To make new knowledge and to tell people there is new knowledge. It comes from this. And I will unpack this for us a little bit more. Don't worry if it sounds like you don't understand it yet, but just hold on to this adage that writing is both thinking and doing. And if we understand that, this idea of making new knowledge and telling people about new knowledge, how writing does that, we'll be able to come to it slowly. So thinking or thought is mental work, and what you're thinking in your head is invisible to anybody who doesn't live inside your head. But when we do something, when we make something, when we say something, that mental work, that invisible thought in our head becomes visible or audible, right? And writing is something that shapes thought and gives it concrete form. So what I'm also doing here is I'm changing the idea that we have thought first and writing second. And that's how we usually think about it, that, oh, I have to write an answer or a paper, I know what it is, I just have to type it out, right? I'm suggesting this way of going about writing, that writing is both writing is something that shapes how we think, even as it gives invisible mental thought a concrete form. So this is going to be our focus in the second part of the workshop, where when we go back to the ideas in the first, I hope we can develop them. But to do this, to understand this a little better, I have one little exercise for you, and the exercise is the following. I'd like you to write 3 sentences, and only 3 sentences, not more than that, on any one of the 3 prompts. And the 3 prompts are here. Do you have a special memory associated with butterflies? That's prompt 1. You can answer this in 3 sentences, or you can write 3 sentences about the last time you saw a butterfly. And last prompt, write 3 sentences you imagine about a butterfly. So it's really totally up to you how you want to do this. You can pick any one of these 3 prompts and write 3 sentences. Once you've written it, please paste all 3 sentences together in the box and Preetha will once again read them out to me, and then we can see what the point of this exercise is. If you have any doubts about the exercise, you can ask in the chat box and we can answer that too.
We have butterflies are beautiful.
So read the 3 sentences together.
The last time I saw butterflies was on a lawn in my school. Yeah, so just whenever you all are writing, please paste all the three sentences together because there's so many of the things coming, we can't keep track otherwise. Could you just paste the three sentences at once, not as three different messages?
Yes, yes.
The last time I saw the butterfly was yesterday. I was standing on my roof when I saw it fly past me. The butterfly was black in color.
Very good. So location in space and time and an observation about its color. Very good. What else do we have?
Fluttering through the gentle breeze, its varying hues sparkling in the light of the sun. With the glide that it performs just above the waves of the sea, it meekly hides its head from the illusions of the world.
Very good. So
Rushing against the current of the wind, it soars up high to touch the stars.
Wonderful. So here are some sentences that are about imagining what a butterfly might be, what the flight of a butterfly might be, even as far as like reaching and touching the stars. Very nice. Anything else?
Last time the butterfly I saw was red in color with purple dots. I was trying to catch it and it got very furious at me.
Oh, very good. So, a colorful butterfly, purple and red, trying to catch it, and the butterfly got angry, didn't want to be caught. Wonderful. In fact, I remember as a child, there would be these tiny yellow butterflies in our garden, and I would go catch them. And I remember the sensation between my fingers as it would be trying to get away. And often I would just let it go, but when I did, there would be this yellow powder in my fingers, right? So turns out all of us have some association with the butterfly, either a actual memory or something we've read or something we have imagined or cobbled together with what our sense of what butterflies are. And when we write it down, each of you that wrote down those sentences took a piece of thought that was either memory or observation, and you put it down in a sentence and made it concrete and made it real, right? Till it was in your head. In fact, till I asked you, maybe you didn't even think about it, right? And while it was in your head, nobody else knew. But when you wrote it down, it became concrete, right? So let's look at another example here.
Before we move on, Ananya, there is
Yeah.
one very interesting question pertaining to this point you made.
Yes.
I'd like to bring it up.
Please.
Somebody said that when you say writing is thinking,
Yes.
but when we are copying text by writing it down from a book, is it writing then just doing and not thinking?
Yes, that's a very, very good observation. When we are copy pasting, is it not? Well, actually, when we are copy pasting, it's not writing either, right? Writing in the sense that you might be mechanically typing it. But here, we are not thinking about writing only as mechanical typing of text that already exists. You could very well just do a copy function and a paste function. If you copy pasted something, you wouldn't call it writing, right? So if you're copy pasting or only noting down, it is not. So then that's what we are doing. We are copying with the act of typing or with the act of noting down in the script that we know, the same thing that we see elsewhere. And in that situation, I would not really call that writing, because here we are talking about writing as something that is coming, that is involving your mental faculties as well. When you are reading something, thinking about it, comprehending, responding to it, and writing something of your own. When I'm saying writing, I mean that. But this example that you have given me would be an example of copy pasting, or typing, which is mechanical, but which is not writing in the sense of writing something of your own. Does that answer the question, Preetha, you think?
Yes, I think that does.
Okay, great. I'm going to move on. So this quotation I have in yellow is something we've been seeing over and over again. And on the right is something new. What do you think it is? What is this text on the bottom, on the right side? Butterfly Laughter by Catherine Mansfield. What do you think it is? Do we have any responses?
A poem.
Yes. So I have on the right side a poem. In fact, one of the responses that you read out to me, Preetha, could very well have been a poem too, right? Trying to catch a butterfly and finding that it not only does it miss your grasp, but then it almost flies high enough to touch the stars, right? So when I asked you to write about a butterfly, some of you gave me descriptions, some of you wrote what could very easily be poetry as well. So what am I doing now? So we have reached that point when people are asking me also, well, okay, so what do we mean when we say writing is something that is making us think? Now remember that blue box where I kept repeating the question, how does writing produce new knowledge? I'm going to try and address that now. So, and I also made the claim that writing is a place where we are thinking and doing at the same time, right? So it's not like thinking comes first and doing happens later, but in the action of writing, thinking and doing happens together. And in that, I want to also ask us what it means, what the question of certainty in knowledge means, because writing down means that you're putting knowledge down that's certain, that's sure, but is it really the case? So let's come at that, and in the course of this we are going to be able to answer another question that came up in the chat box about the nature of knowledge that Preetha had read to me during the break. So I'm going to first read you the poem by Catherine Mansfield. In the middle of our porridge plates, it's called Butterfly Laughter. In the middle of our porridge plates, there was a blue butterfly painted. And each morning, we tried who should reach the butterfly first. Then the grandmother said, "Do not eat the poor butterfly." That made us laugh. Always she said it, and always it started us laughing. It seemed such a sweet little joke. I was certain that one fine morning, the butterfly would fly out of our plates, laughing the teeniest laugh in the world, and perch on the grandmother's lap. So here's a poem by Catherine Mansfield where she remembers her childhood, right? Somebody remembered the last time I saw a butterfly was in school, right? And schools have been closed for over a year. So here's somebody who's thinking of her childhood, and she's thinking of visiting her grandmother where the children would be eating porridge out of a dish that had a butterfly painted, a blue butterfly painted at the bottom, and the children competed with each other to see who would reach the butterfly first, which means finish the porridge sooner than the others. And the grandmother would say, "Don't eat the butterfly," and they would all laugh. And the poet says, and it seemed to me then that I was certain that one day the butterfly would just come alive, fly out of our plates, and then just sit laughing. The butterfly itself would laugh, and it would perch on their grandmother's lap, right? So this is a poem about that. On the left is a quote we have looked at before. We'll look at it again. To test that idea, she sent specimens of the common wood nymph to Natasha Matre, who studies acoustic communication. And what did she played noises at the butterfly's ears while shining lasers on them, analyzing the data. She could work out how much the ears move in response to different sounds. And then I've highlighted a quote from Yak in bold. We can get a pretty good appreciation of what the butterfly is hearing. And I think the question Preetha read out to me from the chat box was about this. What do we make of this sentence where a scientist is saying, we can get a pretty good appreciation, right? And the poem is saying, I was certain, look at the difference in the language. I was certain that one fine morning, the butterfly would fly out of our plates and laughing would go sit on the grandmother's lap. And the language here is of certainty. But this person who's sort of had a hypothesis is getting it all tested, is saying, having done all of this, we can be, it's a pretty good appreciation of what the butterfly is hearing, that we know, we're not sure, we're not certain, but we can appreciate it well. So now notice one is a poem speaking the language of certainty. So do you think it's possible that the blue butterfly from the plate will fly out and sit on the grandmother's lap? What is your response? Type it in the chat box.
No.
Yeah. What do you have, Preetha?
Mostly no.
No, it can't, right? So here's a situation where the poet says, I'm sure this is going to happen, that the butterfly will laugh and go land on my grandmother's lap, right? And here's a scientist who's done all this work and saying, it's a pretty good, yeah, we have a pretty good appreciation of what it might be. Pay attention to the language here. What is going on in each, right? So there's poetry, and then there is the work of the scientists who are trying to figure out a certain phenomenon. What can we say, right? So obviously the poet is being ironic there. The poet knows that it's not really possible. So saying that it's certain is to really talk about those childish fantasies about what you want in the world, where something may be impossible in terms of logic of science or physics or whatever else, but you would love that. You would love for your grandmother to have those blue butterflies for real, right? So imagine summer holidays, kids are sitting around, and you want to imagine your grandmother really surprised and happy, and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be? And I'm sure one day if all these butterflies came around and sat on her lap, that it would make her really happy, right? So nobody reading the poem really thinks that's scientific knowledge or real knowledge in that sense. But it's pretty clear that using the language of certainty says something to us about how children feel or how we think about our past, what feelings are generated here. It's the certainty of that feeling rather than scientific fact, right? Here, in the quote in the left that we've been looking at, when Yak says we can get a pretty good appreciation, what we are noticing here is Yak's carefulness, right? Yak's carefulness in not claiming something that they cannot be entirely sure of. To say that, yeah, we can appreciate what it's hearing, but we can't tell for sure, right? So pretty good appreciation is a feeling that, yeah, it's working, but I don't want to say it in a way that you can turn around and say, no, that can't be proved scientifically. Up to this much you can claim, but beyond that you can't, right? So notice that both of these things are happening in writing. And it is really the scientific article which is having us question, claims in absolute certainty. They are not saying that they can't hear. And in fact, they will later on go and say that butterflies can hear, but how much, what exactly, they're being very careful with their use of language when they do that, right? And notice here, so we usually put literature and science in absolutely opposing fields. We'll say that, oh, okay, either you're interested in science or you're interested in literature. You can't possibly be interested in both, and they must deal with different parts of our brain, and it must be different people who need to study all of this. Turns out that is not really the case. That if we have to study and appreciate any phenomenon, we may have to study and appreciate it from very many different disciplinary angles. And poetry tells us a lot about the language, about use of language, about the status of knowledge, about location of feelings, about how we know things, as much actually as science does, though maybe not in exactly the same ways. Look at it. Look at the bottom, I've pasted for you Ed Yong's article's title. The title is The Butterflies That Hear with Their Wings. And if you gave me only that sentence and you didn't give me the little information that comes below it, when I read out the sentence, butterflies that hear with their wings, what kind of text do you think comes after that? Preetha? If I read you only that title, what would you expect?
Definitely some kind of a fantasy.
Or a poem or a short story that is fantastical, because we don't know that butterflies can hear with their wings.
Someone
right?
in the chat says a fairy tale.
A fairy tale. We would expect a fairy tale, right? But so look at Ed Yong's article title. It is, it could have very easily been the title of a poem. And where that title takes us, immediately takes us to a place where we are ready to imagine a fairy tale, where we are ready to imagine a poem, where we are ready to imagine something incredibly beautiful, is where Ed Young takes us mentally with that title and then gives you that little information. That this is, it's as beautiful as a poem, what I'm going to tell you about. And what I'm going to tell you about is actually scientific information that we have now gathered, that this is not a fairy tale. There is a petite group, there's a small group of butterflies called the Saturnine that use the swollen veins to channel sound into tiny ears. In fact, that little sentence is the sum up of the new scientific information that you need to know. So if you only read the title and the subtitle, you would know what the article is about, what the main argument is, what the new knowledge and what the new knowledge from the research is. You read the article to find out who did the research, how did it start, what were the questions, how did it progress. You get all those details. But if you don't have the time and you read only that, you know that scientific work has been done and there are butterflies that can actually hear with their wings. But the point I'm making here is that we make these distinctions between language of literature and language of science. And I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but we also need to think about that language of literature and language of science also are doing very similar work, and an appreciation, just like Yak is saying, we can get a pretty good appreciation of the what butterfly is hearing. We can get a pretty good appreciation of the nature of knowledge if we don't separate them out too much. And I'm going to, in the next slide, elaborate on this idea. And I want you to pay attention to this sentence I put in bold in Mansfield's poem, laughing the teeniest laugh in the world, right? Butterflies don't make any sound or noise, is something else that we learn from Young's article, that butterflies hear, but they actually don't make any, they don't have a call like many other insects do. Butterflies, you don't hear. I mean, you may hear their wings, if at all, if your ears are that sensitive, but they don't have a call, right? And here she's saying, laughing the teeniest laugh in the world, and it's a poem, it's fantasy. And I'm going to take you to my next slide here. And I went and did a little research on Yang also, and I came across this news item. And the news item is about caterpillar talking evolved from walking. And turns out this is not an essay by Yak, but somebody who's been doing and has written an essay based on her research that she's currently doing. So if you go and just Google her, you'll find that now she's working on caterpillars and the communication between caterpillars. And she talks about caterpillars talking, and this title is about caterpillars talking. So if caterpillars are talking, is it really that impossible that butterflies might laugh? Long before many of the things were invented and made real, people in science fiction, fantasy would imagine all these gadgets and imagine all these things. And then people would land on the moon and figure that, okay, maybe some of those things were not just fantasy. So a hunch, a hypothesis, which may be a poet or a short story writer, may not be that different from Jane Yak saying, oh, this swollen vein is so close to the ears, is it possible it's like a hearing aid? And then doing the experiment to figure it out, right? So that poem led me there, but also the notion that, poetry does not require research, or if you have done some research, the only way to write that is a research article, is also not true. Different types of writing can come out of any research that you do. In fact, whether you're writing a short story or a poem, you need to do as much research as anybody else is doing, right? So while I was reading all of this and I got very interested in butterflies, I learned a new piece of information. And that new piece of information was that the collective pronoun for a butterfly, so a group of butterflies, is actually called a kaleidoscope. I didn't know that before. It was new knowledge, it was new information for me. And how I utilized that new research, that new information I learned, was by writing a poem. I didn't write a scientific article, I can't, but I wrote a haiku, right? And I have put that haiku on the left side of my screen. So this is a very imagistic, haikus are very imagistic. So imagine this now: rib cage, shoulder blades, the pit of my stomach, a kaleidoscope of butterflies. So imagine what is the shape of a rib cage. The rib cage looks like a butterfly, doesn't it? How about shoulder blades? If you've ever seen X-rays or if you've seen images of skeletons, shoulder blades also look like wings of butterflies. And of course, we have a saying called when you're really worried or you're afraid of something or you're nervous, you say, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach, right? So I think about the human body and I realize all the presence of butterflies or images of butterflies in the shape of the rib cage or the shoulder blades or the metaphoric ones in the pit of the stomach. Actually, this collection can be called a kaleidoscope of butterflies. Why? Because a group of butterflies is called a kaleidoscope. So I ended up writing a haiku about that, and I put it together with some paintings that I had done, thinking about butterfly wings. I really enjoyed Ed Yong's article and listening to Jane Yak, and I went and looked up some YouTube videos as well. So turns out when we encounter new knowledge, it can spark all kinds of different works, it can inspire all kinds of different work that a person might do. And this artificial difference that we make between, oh, but this is creative and that is academic, or this is poetry and that is research, actually that is incorrect, because new knowledge you can actually produce you can get new knowledge from different kinds of writing, and you can convey new knowledge in different kinds of writing as well, right? So this certainty and the certainty which is not about the certainty of scientific knowledge, but certainty of a certain kind of feeling, right? That becomes that's very beautifully conveyed in Mansfield's poem. And this bit about this laughing, which seems so impossible, turns out now the scientists are talking about caterpillars talking. And I was like, well, if caterpillars are talking now, then maybe in 10 years, they might find out butterflies are laughing. Who knows, right? But the beginning of research quite often is that it is in hypothesis, it is in making wild connection, it is in doing the kind of thinking that poets do. So poetry and research, feeling and knowing, I would like to say that scientists feel their way around work as much as poets have to research and know what they're talking about, and they both do it in writing. And on the right side, I've given you a few more quotations from the essay itself. Look at it. The very first box, Yak says, you know, this is bizarrely bloated. We've read this quote before, right? This is weird. This is bizarrely bloated. Those are feelings. You're like, oh, this is weird. I mean, that's hardly scientific language if you think about it. But scientists feel their way around. And I think it's really important to know that. How do we know it? We know it in the sentences that give us their process. So that's an important thing to remember. Scientists are tentative. Maybe she suspected they have the insects here, right? In the box next to that, when we are recording from a butterfly and we are talking, the nerves are just firing like crazy, right? Again, what you have there is a kind of analogy that helps you understand what you're looking at when you're looking at a phenomenon. And the phenomenon here is looking at how the butterflies' hearing mechanisms are being studied by Mhatre, actually. Moths don't hear us, but butterflies can. And this is a little bit different than the previous time when she said, oh, pretty good appreciation of what they hear. We don't know what exactly they hear, but we know that they can hear. So here's an assertion. Moths can't hear human voice. They're tuned to hear higher frequencies, but butterflies can actually hear human voices. And this idea that nerves are firing like crazy is in the context of butterflies, when they hear human beings talk, how their nerves are behaving. This is a description of that, right? So again, go back to Catherine Mansfield's poem, and the idea that when you're talking, butterflies, the nerves of butterflies are firing like crazy. They can actually hear what you're saying. Seems like such a beautiful idea, and I almost get goosebumps thinking about it. And I wonder if that child would be somebody who becomes a Jane Yak, who pays attention to butterflies in real life and says, nobody's paid attention to the swelling at the end of the wing. Maybe it makes the butterfly here. Should I do a study on it? Why didn't anybody else do it? Why did Janiac do it, right? So that kind of inspiration of the imagination is actually very, very important to scientific work as well. And the last thing that I want you to notice is another quotation where I've put in bold a certain sentence, which is very, very important to remember. And it's something that researchers always keep in mind, and they always make sure they conveys this. That so it turns out insect hearing is very different has evolved very differently from how other creatures have evolved hearing. There are species with ears on their torsos, antenna, wings, knees, and legs. And in most cases, scientists know very little about how these organs work. So not knowing. Remember what I said about having unanswered questions, and they are as important as having answers that seem right in the moment, in the context of the knowledge we have. So scientists not only feel their way around, scientists also constantly work with this idea that we don't always know. And why am I putting this to you like this is because we're usually used to thinking that, you know, poets are the one, or literature, or people writing stories, they're just imagining stuff. They don't actually know things. They can't really claim certainty in anything, but scientists do. But turns out both poets and scientists need to do both. Both of them are feeling their way around, and there's a connection actually between feeling and knowing, and a question and a connection that, so it's not like you can have knowledge, it's not like you can know without also accessing your feelings, right? And feelings are one way in which you can know the knowledge that you know, and scientists utilize that as much as poets do, even though we are told that that is not the case, that the language of science is, you know, without affect, that the language of science is neutral. Any little bit of research is going to tell us that that's, and many people have worked on that now, that that's not necessarily true. So I'm going to sum this up now. This is the last slide, and we have just about 10-15 minutes more in this session. So I started by saying, you know, what do we communicate in academic writing, and how do we do it? So we communicate new knowledge. And how do we do it? We do it in all the ways that I gave you examples of. These are by no means the only ways to do it, but this is a pretty good list, right? We communicate new knowledge by documenting the process. We communicate new knowledge by not only saying, well, what is new very clearly. So there's a clear expression of what the new knowledge is, and the new knowledge is that butterflies, some species of butterflies can hear with their wings, but making sure that all the questions get documented, making sure that the process gets documented, making sure that claims are made carefully so that you're not overstating a claim, is all a part of the way in which new knowledge is communicated, right? So, and what might be new? Someone had said, well, what is new knowledge? New knowledge can be a new idea. New knowledge can be a new explanation. So what Janiac has contributed is a new explanation about a certain organ that is there in a butterfly's body, right? It can be a new explanation, it can be new questions. And what is the point of all of this? The point of all of this is that the new knowledge will replace or challenge what we knew before. Either it will add to it, or it would replace it, it would challenge it. And we have to be open to that, because that's the point of all this studying, reading, writing that you're doing right now. And fundamentally, what you're doing right now ought not to be that different from what someone like Janiac, Ediom, or even I do when I write my research papers, right? So going back to the question, what is the purpose of academic writing? It's the purpose is to make knowledge, which means when you're reading your textbooks, what are you looking for in it? When you go back and read your social studies textbook, or your physics textbook, or your literature textbook, or any textbook, whatever subjects, whatever psychology, whatever your discipline may be, when you go back to the textbook, now ask yourself again, what am I expected to do? If I were Ed Yong, what would I do reading this chapter in history or geography or whatever else that you're reading, right? You are reading it because it is putting together knowledge thus far, And you are reading it because not only must it be communicated clearly to you, but you must be able to communicate it clearly ahead as well, right? So writing is both doing and thinking. I said that that's one of the unique characteristics of writing. And because it is doing and thinking, writing uses both feeling and knowing to communicate our work clearly. And that is something we find in Ed Yong's article. That is something we find in the quotations when Janiak and Mhatre speak, for example. And so this divide between feeling and knowing, also separated into disciplines, is something that's not really true. And as you go to college, as you read more, write more, you'll find that the best of our knowledge comes from really having worked from a place of both. So on the right, I have the box again, where I had collected answers about what we do when we study. I'll ask you these questions again. Think about it a little bit and tell me whether you have a different understanding now of what some of these things might be. So if I ask you now, what do we do when we study? What might your answer be? Do you have a different answer from before?
We think.
We think. Wonderful. And what is the nature of that thinking? So now when you go to a history book or biology book or physics or whatever, what will you do that you didn't do before?
We read, analyze, and formulate our own opinion on something.
Okay, so then we have to be think for ourselves. Should we put it like that? That not only, so we are not reading the textbook in order to memorize information. That is no fun at all. We think for ourselves about the material that we are reading. That's a very good answer, right? And that might be, this essay by Ed Yong might have been in your textbook.
Like Young attempt to acquire and possibly share that knowledge.
Yeah, very good. When you're writing your extended essay and you are reading all these source material, you are young. You have to now put that story together of how this new knowledge. When you're writing your extended essay, what you're doing is you are saying, well, okay, I've read 4 essays, and what's a new way to look about all this material that has been written, right? So when you're writing your extended essay, you are Ed Young. And you have to look at the material that you're reading for the new knowledge it's giving, and then you're communicating it to your reader.
We identify unanswered questions.
Very good. This is very, very important. Identify unanswered questions. That is it. You are not going to get a new knowledge unless you know, well, what is the question or what is the point that it's dealing with. And so identifying unanswered questions, identifying gaps.
We establish connection between our old knowledge and our new knowledge.
Beautiful, beautiful connection between old and new knowledge. And this is so important because you're not going to know what new knowledge is unless you know what old knowledge is. And can I also just interrupt you here for a second, Pritha, to just say that when we say old knowledge and new knowledge, it is your knowledge, what you knew before and what you didn't. Maybe one of you here had heard already of this article and knew that butterfly is here, right? And so maybe Ed Yong is not giving you anything new, right? But what is it that you knew before? And what is it that you now know, having read something? That is a log that you have to keep for. It's a very useful technique. Okay, I'm going to read on this topic. What do I already know? Let me write 10 sentences about this topic that I know. Now, I'm going to read something and I'm going to read for what is being presented as the new thing. Now, does it sit with what I knew, or is it adding to my knowledge, right? And keeping a track of that is a very, very useful way of reading and writing, and will allow you to do what Ed Yong is doing. Wonderful. So now my question, what do textbooks contain?
Knowledge about new topic.
Is it okay? Knowledge, right? Knowledge. Okay. Now something new. Now what might be new? Topic might be new. It's possible. It's possible it's on a topic that is new to you. That's possible. What else might there be in your textbook?
Unanswered questions and answers to them.
Okay. So we are repeating from the previous list, but true, it's possible.
Yeah.
So knowledge on a new topic that may be in the form of an unanswered question, right? Unanswered questions are very cool because that's where the possibility of looking in more comes in, right? So that's very nice. Anything else? Anybody else have a different kind of a response perhaps? What is there in your textbook? Any answer is good. Be playful. Let's see what you get. So if Ed Yong's essay was in your textbook, what would you say is in your textbook?
Annotations.
Annotations. What does annotations mean?
Versions of concepts.
Explanations. Annotations mean explanation, right? Explanation of ideas, very good. In fact, I really like this because to say that Yong's article allows Jane Yak to annotate the butterfly differently from how we knew it before would be a beautiful answer. So annotation, somebody had earlier said when we study, we take notes. This is a build up on that. Annotations allow for us to understand something better, and new research means new annotations are possible. So if you ask me to annotate a butterfly now that I've read Ed Yong's essay, I would be able to annotate it or explain its physiology differently than I could do if I had not read Ed Yong's essay. So that's a very nice answer. I like that a lot. Can we have one more in this? Okay, let's move on. Unless somebody really has a pressing answer. Sir, okay. So now the next two questions. Do all types of knowledge come from reading and writing? And is there reading and writing all about all forms of knowledge? And these two questions you must, now you're probably able to tell that this has to do with that method of thinking that thinking and doing are different things always, right? It may not be. You may think that something is a craft or a skill and you don't have to do reading and writing for it, but turns out writing is something that is both thinking and doing together. So most things that we know of, actually I'll stop sharing screen at this point now. I actually don't know very many things that exist in the world in the domain of knowledge where thinking and doing are completely separate, right? And I can't think of a single thing which exists only as doing or only as thinking, right? How would we know? We wouldn't know thinking unless it was done and written out. And we wouldn't know there would be no doing without some thought behind it, right? So so academic work, textbooks, which seem so damn boring sometimes that we have to sit with them and we have to write our exams and we have to write all these essays. Why is everybody become our enemy and torturing us? Is actually turns out, the basics of your training, getting you ready for what you're going to do in college. And for those of you who want to go into higher education and research, versions of that, more complicated versions, more advanced versions, but versions of the same thing is exactly what, researchers in the fanciest university libraries and labs are doing, as you are doing when you sit down to write your exam as you're studying your textbook. So that's what I had to share with you today. It's 5 o'clock. I can take Vikram, are you around? I can take a few questions if you like, if you want to share your observations, if you want to If you have any questions, I'll take that. We can do that for a few minutes. I'm available for it. Yeah.
Okay,
Preetha.
so there are a couple of questions which I was collating in the process of this thing.
Yeah.
One interesting question that came is the way we, in the light of whatever you taught, then this question came, is hypothesis and writing on the hypothesis different from each other then?
Is hypothesis and writing on the hypothesis?
Yeah.
Yes, it is different in the sense that hypothesis is when, is that moment when Janiac says, so close to the ear. Could it be a hearing aid? Can't be sure, right? And then when she begins to write about the hypothesis, and she's also gone to the lab, she's looked at the anatomy carefully. She's like, oh, I need to do some more acoustic test on this, send it off to another lab. When she's writing about that hypothesis, it's slowly gaining detail. And in this case, it turns out she was right. But in many times, it turns out it's wrong. And then you have to modify the hypothesis till you can come to a claim that's correct. So then it can only happen when you start writing about the hypothesis. And that is the process of research. So hypothesis is different from the process of writing about the hypothesis. The second part is actually the research that you're doing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and one of the interesting responses also to the last bit of questions, somebody said that the textbooks are the key to open the door of our minds to think and widen our knowledge.
That's true. That's true. And I hope I showed you how and why, because typically, and I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I was in your place also one day. Actually, I've been in your place, not just in school, but also in college. Sometimes you're reading things like, why the hell am I doing this? Why are you making me do this? So sometimes even in college or graduate school, there are compulsory courses and you're interested and you're like, why are you doing it, right? But then I realized that maybe sometimes I don't see why I need to do it, but if I pay attention, it becomes more interesting. So I hope your textbooks will come alive now with all different ways of reading it, and your extended essays will come alive with new things that you're noticing in what you're reading and are presenting it as new knowledge that you have, and your people who read it will love it then, I think.
The other one is not something directly covered in today's session, but somebody is asking, actually quite a few people asked about the nature of academic writing. And one of the questions that is there is, what is the audience for academic writing? How does this influence the language to be used?
Okay, that's a very good question. Now, you may have noticed that the example we picked is actually from the Atlantic, right? And the Atlantic is a popular journal, and its section on science is something that a lot of people read. But just because it is in a popular journal doesn't mean it is not good science. Doesn't mean it is not working with exactly the sources that you would work with in order to publish in a scientific journal. Now, here's the difference. It's a very good question. Why? Because who is your audience depends on where you are writing. So right now you're in school, and who's your audience for your answer? Your examiners and your teachers, and maybe your mom and dad and sister, if they are also into reading what you write. Nobody else is going to read it, right? But then if you're going to publish in the Atlantic, you know that your audience is intelligent readers who are curious but are not experts in science, right? But if you're publishing the same thing, and you can go and look where Yak has published her articles, you will find that these are serious scientific journals, and you can go and see how that language is different from this language. So here Jane Yak is saying things like, oh, it was so weird, it's bizarrely bloated, it's very conversational. In fact, Ed Yong is going to interview her, and she's speaking. She's like, yeah, it's like you lift it up and it's like the armpit, and yeah, it's like penne pasta on spaghetti. Now, is she going to write like that when she's publishing in Cell or Biology or Nature? Or then the scientific journals, you can't write so conversationally. So the question of audience is a good one. When you're writing and you know you're writing for an audience of peers, then that kind of silliness might not be accommodated. Your editor will say, no, you can't write like this. But when you're writing for an audience of curious but intelligent lay people, you can engage them with the sort of language we see here.
Yeah, and one more question that a lot of people have asked which is probably also like just to reflect on it, related to generally how we think in schools. It's about what kind of reading will help me improve vocabulary is quite recurrent, and the other is good writing something which has good vocabulary in it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, vocabulary, what does vocabulary allow you to do? Vocabulary allows you to have words for a range of things that maybe need to be expressed. So if you're asking me about vocabulary, if you are asking me because you tried to say something and you found you didn't have a word for it, then you need vocabulary. Then you need a word for that thing. But if you're asking me because you think academic writing needs to have big words, then the answer is no. Right? So how do we answer the question of vocabulary? Every time you sit down to write something and say something and you're grasping for words and saying, I need a word for that, that's when you need vocabulary. And how do you get that vocabulary? Is by continuous reading, and whatever you're reading. If you're reading The Atlantic, I'm sure you're going to meet words that you didn't meet before. And you're like, okay, what is this word? And you look it up and you understand the context in which it has appeared. And it's an organic way in which we acquire vocabulary. Now, I know this is a matter of great stress, because then the people study for their SATs and their GREs, and there are all these words you have to mug up. And, and sometimes we take those exams, and as a result of that, we end up learning a lot of words which we never use in our writing again, or we feel obliged to use in our writing. But the right way to use words in our writing is very organic. Wherever you are in terms of your reading and writing, reach out for that word that makes sense for you. But using big words to impress, but it's nothing but it doesn't mean anything to you, is equal to bad writing.
And another question connected to that, which you would love, because in the light of our earlier courses also, is discovering new vocabulary also new knowledge?
Absolutely. So it can be. And what do we? Okay, so let's change it from vocabulary to words, right? New vocabulary means what? Discovering new words, and words mean things. And words are the basic building block of speaking, reading, writing. If there were no words, you would have no sentences. So in that sense, the more words we add to our ability to use them, chances that we can express ourselves more is higher. Now, in this context, I want to give you an example. And Preet, I think you have heard this example before. But Shakespeare is credited with neologisms, and that means building new words, right? Making up new words. So when Shakespeare was writing in the 17th century in England, and the plays are so popular even today, turns out invented many words which were not there in English. And if you go to the Oxford English Dictionary, several words will end with Shakespeare used it for the first time, made up this word didn't exist before. Why did Shakespeare make up new words? Turns out the status of English, and this is such an irony, right? Status of English in 17th century was not very good. English was a poor cousin of French, of Italian, it's a Romance language, but French and Italian had all the literature. They were all, they were much closer to the classical languages of Latin, and the flourish of the Renaissance literature was also in all of that. And when Shakespeare, in fact, one of the big fights of the Reformation, the religious fight that happened in the Renaissance, and because of which Renaissance also happened in 16th, 17th century England, was over the translation of the Bible. There were people who actually argued that you can't translate the Bible into English because English is not good enough, that English doesn't have all the words, that it's better off in German and in French and Italian and all of that. So that's the situation English is in when Shakespeare starts writing. And as I said, Shakespeare was reaching out to things and didn't have words. So Shakespeare just made up those words, right? So you need words. And so say I am studying Shakespeare and I'm able to unpack the history of these words, the biography of these words, and words also change meanings, words require definition. much of our writing, even at the research level, when we are doing work in the social sciences and the humanities, is about definitions. What do words mean? What do concepts mean? So yes, long answer to your short question is work with words, unpacking them, learning about them, learning. And so I treat words like people. And so I don't say words have meaning. I say words have biographies. Words have history. So once you unpack that, many scholars spend their entire life doing that. That's one thing. Philology is a genuine discipline of knowledge that scholars also do. Yeah. So it's 10 minutes past 5.
One last comment
last
and observation, I think, with which it could be a nice thing to end on, nice note
Okay.
to end on.
Okay.
It's an observation on the slide on the poets and the scientists.
Yeah.
Somebody says that this is like rejecting the binary and is deconstructed.
Well, whoever this is, let's just hire them into the Center for Writing and Pedagogy already. Please email us. We'll give you a job with us. Yes, that's you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Yes, I am rejecting that binary, and this it's an unhelpful binary. And the best of scholars. Now think about. Again, I'm going back to the 16th, 17th century. Why? Because as Vikram told you, my PhD is on that and I do a lot of writing and publishing in that area. That's my area of specialty. So all my examples tend to come from there. So look at someone like Da Vinci, right? And not just Da Vinci, there are many such figures who, whether it was art or poetry or drawing or, you didn't think that these things were separate, that it involved separate parts of the brain, right? So how you were drawing the human figure was as much about understanding human physiology and physiognomy as being able to represent it. And Da Vinci also wrote. So there was drawing, there was writing, and Da Vinci was very interested in mechanics and machines, and he would draw very carefully those things as well as the human body, right? So yeah, I am rejecting that binary, and you have a job. Please apply.
Yeah, I think on
that note, I think we could end the session on that note.
Yeah.
Vikram, I think Vikram and Bhakti have all gone to the YouTube channel. I don't think they're here. Kaiser is here. So yeah, thank you so much. It's very strange about 400-500 of you were here today, but I saw none of you, but I heard your thoughts. You saw me and heard my thoughts, and I'm hoping between the audio visual, we are taking back something concrete from today's session. If you have questions or feedback for us, please write to Vikram. And I would love to hear from you. So drop us an email and yeah, stay in touch. So the Center for Writing and Pedagogy at Kriya University does have a Facebook page, does have an Insta page, does have a YouTube channel. And we might be posting some of snippets from today there as well. So if you would like to continue to stay in touch with us, you could find us there and see what we are up to also. So thank you so much.
There are a lot of questions about the certificate. So
the certificates Vikram or Bhakti will have to handle, and maybe Kaiser also knows something about it. Would one of you want to step in and tell us?
Only Kaiser is here.
Okay, so Vikram, so if you have questions about the certificate, I'm sure Vikram will handle that. I think they are on the YouTube channel is why they are not being able to respond. So we'll call this to a close.
Yeah, and that's also the reason I have not been responding to all your queries about the certificate, because I really don't know.
But I'm sure Vikram will handle that. So if you've registered and you've attended, I'm sure Vikram will find a way to get a certificate.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and have a good evening, and have a great exam answers, and good luck with your extended essays. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ananya, and thank you, Kaiser.
Yeah.